Ladies and gentlemen, we are live here on this 16th day of April 2014 on this Wednesday worldwide edition. We are going to open the phones up today on a whole bunch of subjects, and then William F. Jasper will be joining us for about 45 minutes in the second hour to talk about the waterfront, global governance, the move towards UN and corporate rule, the different global partnerships that are merging, the different planetary agreements together into one world government. The editor of the New American Magazine is going to be joining us coming up. And as I said, we'll have open phones later in this hour and in the third hour today. There's a very interesting article up on drudgereport.com. Shock, 86 million workers sustain 148 million benefit takers. That's right. Does that sound like a free or fair society where 86 million people work to sustain 148 million benefit takers, government benefit takers? That's not women and children that are being sustained by the man working. No. They got rid of men being the head of the household a long time ago. The state is now the head. And then it takes the money and hands it out to anyone who'll vote to take guns, anyone that'll vote for open borders, anyone that'll vote to break down the society. This is the nanny state. It's backed up by a giant paramilitary, armor vehicle, machine gun wielding force that trains 24/7 to take on the American people. There's another story right underneath it up on drudgereport.com. Report FBI visiting gun shops to investigate people talking about big government. If you see some Middle Eastern guy come in, you don't have to be so worried about that, close quote. And we have the latest FBI flyer. And that's what they've said officially last year. They're not worried about Middle Eastern radical Islam threats. In fact, the government's openly funding Al-Qaeda now. No. It's all domestic, libertarian, veteran gun owners. And you see, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where the system gears up, arms up, and then comes after the American people, knowing a confrontation will start somewhere. Who knows which side will be in the wrong. And then the war starts, the Civil War. Everything I do is to try to stop that Civil War. Every day, I harp on it perpetually. But you've got Media Matters, you've got CNN, MSNBC, and Glenn Beck constantly saying that I want violence and that I am trying to call for a violent revolution when I'm calling for an intellectual revolution, a cultural revolution to counter their cultural revolution. But if you're being attacked wrongly, you have a right and a duty to protect yourself, and I'm on record always saying that. When the government creates free speech zones in the middle of the desert and beats people up and points guns at people, then you see a bunch of other citizens show up with guns saying, don't do that. The feds say we're going to shoot you. The people march forward with the guns at their sides. Only probably 20–30% were armed from the videos I've seen. Our reporters were there. Walking peacefully towards the feds, past them, trumping their bluff. It's a giant victory. And it really shows why we have the Second Amendment for peace. In fact, what's the motto of the U.S. Army? Strength through superior firepower. Peace through superior firepower. Peace through superior firepower. And that's why the people have the guns as the trump for what we see now happening. Let's get that straight. We're going to come back and look at the frame-up of the Tea Party straight ahead, honchoed by you-know-who. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. We're here live, back weeknight, 7 o'clock Central, Infowars Nightly News. Then, of course, we have the Sunday transmission. We'll have a taped original transmission for you, but I'm going to tape the show for this Sunday because it's Easter, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. But I'm going to cover some important topics there as well. Obviously, the situation with Russia and Ukraine is deteriorating. The stock market is deteriorating. The derivatives overhang of 1.5 quadrillion, that's hard to even say that number, 1,500 trillion, is completely untenable. We're going to be going over all of that today. William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine is going to be joining us to talk about the UN takeover, Bill Clinton's executive order to hand over much of the U.S. as collateral to the UN, and how that ties into UNESCO and the situation with the Bundy Ranch, and a lot more. That's all coming up. And at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to get into this stunning report at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. It's also in the middle column of DrudgeReport.com. FBI visiting gun shops to investigate people talking about big government. And then we have one of the flyers that was handed out. I know this report to be accurate because Brandon Tuberville is an excellent investigative journalist. We carry his work almost every day at Infowars. And it's all turned out to be accurate in the past. But I already know all this. I mean, I've already seen the training manuals. We published them. It's been in the news that they're trying to take on the Tea Party, and that's now West Point's main training mission. And it's been in AP and Reuters and everywhere else that, you know, now we're not worried about Al-Qaeda or Muslim radicals. We're worried about domestic groups, returning veterans, gun owners who want to have a war. And again, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy where the system's trying to start this civil war that you hear me harp on constantly. That's coming up at the bottom of the hour because it dovetails with everything I'm about to cover right now. Everyone knows that I have dedicated myself, really in the last 19 years, but particularly the last 2, to not infight. If I agree with 90% of what somebody stands for and does, even if they attack me, I will not fight back. I will expose the big central banks that fund socialism at the grassroots, exempt themselves from the socialism. That's fascism. On top of it, it's really a form of crony, monopolistic capitalism. And it's the scourge of civilization. The scourge of productivity, the scourge of freedom, of innovation. Everyone knows that I have done my best to try to promote anyone and everyone that's doing good work. We're a broadcast like no other where you see other radio talk show hosts, other filmmakers, other talk show hosts that even have shows directly up against me. I don't even care. Because I want to try to take our understanding of the globalist paradigm and share that with everyone so that there's a mass awakening. I want to beat the New World Order. That's my goal. Glenn Beck said, and we've played the clips, that Ron Paul, with his money bomb, was planning to blow things up. He said that 7 years ago. And we have that on tape. And then he said it again a few years later. And I played the clip. I'm not going to go over it again. But it was when he was on CNN. He knew the public didn't know what money bomb meant. And he said they're trying to get money to blow things up a bomb. Like Guy Fawkes. It's very dangerous. We need the army to go after these Ron Paul supporters. Of course, you know what a money bomb is today. Everybody does because it became so popular and lots of groups call it that. He's a master of lying to his audience. And that's why he's getting sued. And I want to believe he's a good guy because he does a lot of good work. But he knows the FEMA camps are real, the Emergency Centers Establishment Act, and the Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program, and they don't call it a FEMA camp. Of course, he went searching for FEMA camps and didn't find them and went and found a fake internet one that I even predicted he would go show. I mean, I just know how these people work. And still I got upset about that. I got upset about all the rest of it. And I've just left it alone. But when somebody with 15 million listeners over the week and with all the rest of it sits there and day in, day out, week in, week out, frames what we stand for on this show, lies about us, it's very, very frustrating. And frames what's going on with the Bundys and lies and says there's no Harry Reid connection to this and there's no Chinese connection. I mean, we have the BLM documents from last year where they said we've got to get Bundy off the property for the easement for the solar panels. You have to take it off use under UN rules to then make the other, quote, biosphere area on use. It's an environmental easement where we'll let you build on this, but you've got to buy acreage over here and put it in trust. It's in the document. It's in the story breaking. Senator Harry Reid behind BLM land grab of Bundy Ranch. And they've now had Breitbart come out. And I'm going to debunk this. with Brandon Darby. How many people know that Brandon Darby's an admitted FBI asset who works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation? You just look his name up. This is an FBI operative. They have the FBI writing articles saying, we're full of prunes, to quote Dan Rather. No, we're not. So I love how we got Breitbart and Glenn Beck running around saying we're full of it on that. And if, there it is, Wikipedia, Brandon Darby's an American informant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And that'd be fine if you're somebody like, the folks we've had on that expose the weathermen and people like that. My only issue is you should disclose that in the headline. FBI asset says Alex Jones is full of baloney. And then you're wrong, and you show part of the solar farm complex that's 129 miles long, and go, look, over here, solar panels, 100 miles from Bundy. Man, that's a really bad game to play. So it's just like, oh, the government's not buying bullets, they're not buying armored vehicles, but you see the armored vehicles, the black uniforms, the helicopters, and they go, Alex is wrong. Only 150 million bullets were bought, AP. Yeah, in one purchase, you add them up, it was 2.6 billion last time I counted them up. They play these games with you. And I understand that Glenn Beck says he's been threatened and he's scared and he's got all these former FBI guys that protect him and all the rest of it. Whatever, okay? He goes out on the street and has like 30 bodyguards with him. Literally. I go out on the street, nobody's with me because I'm not living in fear. They're going to set me up. They're going to kill me. It's in God's hands. So there's the difference. I don't even think Glenn Beck's a bad guy. I think he's scared to death watching him. Now, why am I getting into Glenn Beck right now? Well, I mean, I have to at this point. I mean, because this endangers me and my family to be framed like this. We're going to play the clips coming up. I started getting calls last week about this, and I just ignored it, didn't even look it up. And then Watson called me last night. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning his time, and he says, you got to watch this stuff. And I said, listen, I'm going exercising, and I'm going canoeing this afternoon, and I'm just not going to go watch it. And this morning he called me, and he said, look at it at like 7 a.m., So I went and looked at it. He goes, you got to respond. And I mean, there's hours of it off and on. I can't watch it all. I don't have time for this. But it's basically, there's a group wants to have violence and war with the federal government and kill everybody. And that's Alex Jones. And you don't want to be with his group. And you want to be with the group, not with the group with the government, but the group in the middle. That's me. And he goes on to say that's where God's at. And that's where Martin Luther King's at. And that the Constitution's not God. God is in the middle, pointing at himself with neuro-linguistic programming. He's saying, I'm God. I mean, it's literal Jim Jones type stuff. When you know psych warfare techniques. My psych warfare technique is just to be straight up and no holds barred, tell the truth. That's the original psych warfare technique, is just tell the truth. But I'm watching, and he's like, you don't want to be on the Alex Jones side that wants violence and killing. You want to be on the government side, as he's pointing to the other side. You want to be on the side with God, and he's pointing at himself. And everyone's sitting around him like he's a cult leader in this video. I mean, it's just freaky, man. Freaky, freaky. That's what I've been told by folks that really know Glenn Beck. They go, listen, Glenn Beck's not a government agent. This guy thinks he's God. I've been told that by 4 different people that know Glenn Beck well. They go, listen, you give him the wrong pin when he's at work. When he asks for a pen, you're fired on the spot. And they all sit there looking at him worshipfully, and he's wearing this weird, bright, striped Judge Smales type yuppie outfit, and his hair's all fake blonde now, and he's all, I mean, it's freaking weird, man. I mean, it's literally like those Eastern yogi cult guys you see on the cable channels for the Californian people. I mean, it is just freaky, and he's saying, I want violence. When anyone that listens to this show knows it's the opposite. I am working around the clock to stop a civil war and have said I don't want any offensive actions. And I've been criticized by some of the militia groups for not being, quote, hardcore enough. And that's on record. So, I mean, come on, Glenn. You're really getting into bad territory here. And if anything happens to me or something, you're going to be very liable. And I don't want to come after you financially and all that. I know it's a barrel of snakes. I don't have anything against you, Glenn. Glenn Beck, the prophet, God is giving me a plan. See, there's the headline. I mean, it's just insane. And again, God can give us all the plan of the Constitution, Bill of Rights. We can be inspired by God, but no, it's all him him, he. And then he lies, that's not a godly spirit, about everybody that he's in competition with. Glenn, I'm not in competition with you. I've been more worldly in the past. God put it on my heart. I just felt moved to try to forgive everybody that's attacked me, and I forgive you. Okay, but I have to do this now. I'm going to have to get all the clips of you saying that Ron Paul, the money bomb, blow stuff up and use the army against Ron Paul supporters, and that's it. I'm going to put out the Glenn Beck deception. I got to put out the Obama deception, too. And I've just got so much to do. It's just Glenn Beck, though. I have to show he's lying about me. He's telling his audience on talk radio stations across the country, many of which carry my show so they know he's lying, that I want people to have a civil war. That is the last thing I want. And he knows full well he's a liar. And they obviously got marching orders from somebody. Alex Jones here, back live. The main point that has to be made here up front is this is bigger than Alex Jones. It's bigger than Clive Bundy. It's bigger than any of us individually. The demonization of citizens armed in public is the way they're going to ban weapons in this country. And the fact that people showed up with guns after the feds created free speech zones, attacked men and women, tasered people for no reason, threatened people, shot a young man on a bicycle who, quote, didn't stop quick enough on his 10-speed nearby a few weeks ago. The public is sick of having feds out of their jurisdiction occupying the society. And there is now an attack by the neocon branch of things against the Constitution, against Paul Revere, against George Washington, against Americana, against the idea of the people being a check and balance against a tyrannical takeover. It's that simple. But it's peace through superior firepower, to quote a Army adage. Peace through superior firepower. In fact, guys, we pull up the exact quote. I believe that's the Army slogan. That's also known as the U.S. Motto. Peace through superior firepower. That's the whole idea. Is that, oh, you want to rough people up and beat them up if they have a sign on the side of the street? That's Tiananmen Square. That's un-American. We're going to show up with our guns, and if you want to shoot us, you'll be the person that shoots first, shot heard around the world. Now, I don't even particularly want that to happen. In fact, I don't want a civil war to kick off in this country. But the globalists are going to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing until they have the confrontation on their time at their place so that they can start the Homeland Security war on domestic groups, which they admit is their new main focus. And so a lot of people are going to get politically intimidated by that. They're going to roll over and say, okay, we'll do whatever you want. Federal court rules that Catholic churches got to pay for abortions, do it. They pass laws saying vaccinations are mandatory, got to do it. They pass laws banning homeschooling in Ohio, got to do it. They want to have national conscription, got to do it. Got to have a national police force, got to do it. I mean, this is all happening. There's no doubt. And so we say, hey, you know, go out there, show support. We didn't even say go out there armed. And we got criticized for not pushing the whole armed angle. It doesn't matter. Just say that Alex Jones, you know, is the side that wants violence. And Glenn Beck on his TV show and radio show goes on for hours now saying there's the groups that want violence, there's the groups that want to kill, there's the groups that want to shoot the feds. And then he'll say, that's the Alex Jones group. You don't want to be part of it or the federal group. You want to be with God in the middle, which is lukewarm, so God spits you out of his mouth. And it's not violent to say we have guns, if things get really bad, we'll defend ourselves. It's not violent to say if they're taking people to re-education centers, the Democrats are calling for openly, that people wouldn't have a right to defend themselves. I mean, that's what we've gotten to in this country, that Mark Dyson go out in the street and talk to 10 people in L.A., and 9 of them say, put all gun owners in forced labor camps. I mean, this is how crazy this has gotten. They're calling for arresting people that don't believe in man-made global warming. And then the response is to say that I'm calling for violence when everyone knows we're the opposite of that. And we've explained that the system wants the feds to get in a posture that's so aggressive that it then elicits some type of response and the civil war kicks off. I'm trying to stop that civil war from kicking off, but the feds have to back off to do that and not let the globalist above them orchestrate us into this fight. Just like the James Bond clip we play all the time of the Siamese fighting fish. I want to get that queued up. So when we come back, I'm going to play these clips in order. I'm going to play Glenn Beck from his TV show saying by name, Alex Jones. And then today, more of it. And then they got Breitbart, who has a lot of great articles and a lot of really truthful stuff. So I'm not saying the whole organization's bad, but they have an FBI informant, Brandon Darby, saying we're making it up that there was ever a plan for the Chinese and Rory Reid and all the rest of them. And they just show you a giant map of the state, and it's a 129, 130-mile long deal, and just show you another end of it. And say, see, this is the other side of the state, playing on ignorance. We have the BLM documents from the BLM website. Then they took them down. Then they got them taken off Google Cache. We have all the proof of that. And the documents got saved on scrib.org and all the other sites. I mean, it's a fact, folks. It's a fact that the Chinese are involved with the BLM all over the country buying up land. We've had Jerome Corsi, WorldNet Daily on. This is all over AP Reuters. I mean, this is a fact going on. And then they just say, oh, no, it's a conspiracy theory, so that we can't ever come together. Because if it comes out the Chinese government, the communist, Harry Reid are involved, politically, they're going to lose everything. So they have to say, oh, it isn't real, and who's defending them? Glenn Beck, Breitbart, Media Matters, MSNBC, CNN. I mean, boy, that shows you who the establishment is. My family on both sides came over on the Mayflower. My family was involved deeply in the revolution in 1776. My family on both sides started the Texas Revolution right at the core, Washington on the Brazos. I am an American. I'm as American as it gets. And I care about this country. And I've been on the air 19 years, back when other people were shock jocks attacking the other morning radio host and telling them that they were glad that they had had a miscarriage. I got involved in media to fight for the Second Amendment. I got involved, grassroots, on Access Television to try to stop Agenda 21, UN takeover of the national parks. I made my first film in 1997. I've been physically attacked. I've been death threatened. I've been called deeply racist by MSNBC, showing no clip of me saying anything racist. And you know why? Because I create unity that beats in the heart of black and white and Hispanic and Asian and everyone who wants justice. We are the light in the dark of the night. We want freedom. And the system knows I'm genuine. And the system knows I have a heart of a lion. And that I'm not afraid of their corruption. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of being set up. I'm not afraid of being destroyed. And so they send out their liars, the George Soros Media Matters and all of its front groups, MSNBC, CNN, Nightline, BBC, all of them attacking me every week. And why do they do that? Call me crazy, call me dangerous, call me scary. And I guess freedom is scary. I guess it is scary to see someone who doesn't care about political correctness or doesn't care about threats and doesn't care about being demonized. Because I know I'm right. I'll tell you what really scares the system is that we continue to win. We continue to put the talking points of truth out and decompartmentalize the public so they can see the big picture and understand. Because they know the average person in the government's good. They know the average person on the street's good. They're just compartmentalized as well. And they're scared, ladies and gentlemen, because what we're saying is getting purchased. It's getting a toehold. And the truth is, you can't just get rid of Alex Jones now and have this signal stop. The White House has vowed to target alternative media. In public announcements in 2013, they vowed to infiltrate conservative and libertarian groups. Folks, I've been approached over the years by the system and told, you better sell out, you better join us, you're going nowhere if you do this. And that's happened to other people in the media. And you need to understand something. When Media Matters and MSNBC and Glenn Beck come out and say that I'm calling for violence, when you listen every day and you don't hear one of my reporters, you don't hear one of my people calling for that, you know it's being done because we're reaching out to the FBI. We're reaching out to the CIA. We're reaching out to the system. I mean, you don't think the CIA and FBI don't know my family's been loyal to this country for almost 400 years before it was even a nation. in 1620 or whatever it was. You don't think they don't know how much of my family is honorably served in special operations and secret operations around this planet? You don't think they don't know I'm real? They got my phones tapped, ladies and gentlemen. They track everything I do. They got psychologicals. They know. They know I'm real. That's why they're scared. Because one man stands up who's honorable. There's other honorable men and women out there that will resonate with that. And that's why they're scared of Clive and Bundy. That's why they're scared of the 1,000+ people that honorably stood out there in the face of government tyranny. And that's why they want to demonize Alex Jones. Because if they can bring down that figurehead, they think they can bring you down. Well, I got news for them. There's no stopping the resistance to tyranny. Just as Newtonian physics shows, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And so the tyranny comes in, there's going to be a reaction. What you're seeing by Homeland Security 6 years ago when Obama got in is when they went this direction to move everything over to the Tea Party, gun owners, returning veterans. They're going to frame us for the Civil War. We have to get out front, not be intimidated, expose they're doing that, expose it for the 95% of the FBI and CIA and Defense Intelligence and the rest of the groups to decompartmentalize them so they understand the triple game going on here, that they want to play us off in a civil war against each other. But at the same time, if the feds fire on us, we've got to defend ourselves. That's peace. Peace through superior firepower. To quote, that's the Army slogan, correct? Peace through superior firepower. I'm going to look it up right now. Go to the old NSA database, and you type in peace through superior firepower. You guys find that for me? Because I know that's the slogan I've seen on the side of helicopters. Or just go tell the riders. It's a commonly used slogan. No, but I want to put the proper slogan on. I know I want to just put it on TV. I just want to put it on screen. I don't want to, I just want to put it on screen. Okay? Now, the issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're supposed to just roll over in the ditch and be told, you go in these little free speech zones in a whole county, and you don't come out here with your guns, and you don't open carry. They're trying to ban guns. We have to open carry, or we lose the entire Second Amendment. The police chief says it's illegal to carry guns openly in San Antonio, even though the state law says you can open carry a rifle. So I went down there in civil disobedience with about 1,400 people and gave a speech in front of the Alamo. And then as soon as we left, anybody they found straggling with a rifle, they would arrest. But that'll all be beaten in court and is being beaten in court. Just like it was illegal to tell Rosa Parks she had to sit at the back of the bus. They may have had some state law saying she had to, but the law written on our hearts knew it was wrong to make her sit at the back of the bus because she was black. The government's got almost 90% of the land in Nevada. This guy was able to run his cattle on it before they claimed he had to pay grazing rights. The common law said he didn't have to do that. It's a commonly used U.S. Army slogan. Peace through superior firepower. But if you believed people like Glenn Beck, that's not the case. But I need to start getting to these clips right now. The point is, this is the most important point. The liberty movement and resistance and even speaking out is being tarred and feathered. It's being demonized. It's being prepared to be framed for staged terror attacks in America. And Glenn Beck knows this before he left Fox News. He said it. They're going to stage terror attacks and blame the liberty movement. That's why I think there's good in Glenn Beck, because sometimes he really tells the truth, and he is charismatic when he does. When he's lying and stuff, he's real disjointed and creepy. And Glenn, you know that. And don't think kissing up to him so you can keep your $300 million or whatever. When the globalists, from all your ghostwritten books and all the rest of it, and the science of getting money from your listeners, which is fine if it wasn't only about that. If it was about funding the liberty, that'd be one thing. But if it's about dominating and controlling everyone and bullying everyone that you're God and you're the Messiah, that's not good, Glenn. But the long and short of it is this. He knows that they're getting ready to stage stuff and blame it on the Tea Party to shut the Tea Party down. The Republican and Democratic leadership have decided to do that. You can see the tea leaves. They're as clear as the day. And so he's making his decision to say, I don't care if none of you listen to me again. I'm not going to be for violence with Alex Jones. So at the same time, he's framing the major libertarian constitutional Tea Party that Ron Paul and myself started 7, 8 years ago, that the Republicans tried to take over and failed to take over. It's the grassroots opposition. It's the biggest manifestation of that. So they call it racist, so minorities don't feel like they can be part of it. To be a minority is to be anti-gun and to live in a slum. That's what the Democrats say. Oh, I thought it was to own your own business and be successful and be independent. And to be judged by what you produce and what you stand for, not what color you are. So they don't want us to come together. They've said all over the news that we just showed an article on screen for TV viewers that I was behind the Boston bombing and I'm deeply racist. MSNBC blames Boston bombing on deeply racist Alex Jones. Zero proof. They had the former head of the Republican Party steal on to agree with them. The power structure, it isn't just Harry Reid and land grabs. The Republican leadership's involved as well. I mean, John McCain was part of the Keating Five. They have taken over, they have secured their criminal gains, and now they want to secure it for the future, and they want to start a civil war to bloody the nose of gun owners and to demonize us with staged terror attacks on children. You can guarantee that's going to happen. It's going to be scripted. To then once and for all make us shut up and go away. I have looked at every angle of this. It doesn't matter if you chop little kids' heads off on TV and have a computer-generated Alex Jones doing it. No one's buying it. Everybody knows the score now. The message has been sent. The jig is up. You're wide open. You're not doing this in the dark, hiding your hand. You can, work against your fellow man in the dark only so long. And so I want to tell the power structure, do not stage the terror attacks. Do not blame it on us. And Glenn, you ought to know that if this new world order comes in, they're going to come after you. They're not going to leave you there. You're not going to be left alone now because you're so scared because all your FBI advisors are telling you come in. They live in that same culture of being afraid and compromising and doing what they're told all day and rationalizing. And so you've basically become and joined. I mean, I can already see it on record, your admissions of being run by the FBI. And, the 5 FBI retired guys, oh, yeah, retired in quotes, the 5 retired FBI Mormons that all stand around you and tell you what to do and advise you and all the rest of this. The whole thing you're doing is an FBI program. Just like Breitbart has an FBI asset out today, Brandon Darby, saying that I have made up Harry Reid's connection to the Chinese and the solar farm that we're going to debunk in a moment. So, Glenn, I just want you to understand, I know your entire operation. I know everything about you. You just don't think that you're the only one that has intel and information, right? I mean, you think everybody around you really likes what they're seeing going on? You think your own people really like it? I know all about you, Glenn. All right? And I understand that's why you're scared of me. Now, you know who I work for? You know who I'm an agent of? Freedom. Justice, a future. Stopping the tyrants. The tyrants aren't going to give us quarter, Glenn. We've got to break with them. And I agree we don't want to start a shooting war. We want to do whatever we can to stop that. I don't like the folks calling for a shooting war offensively. But, Glenn, if we cower and just, quote, get in our houses and, quote, don't follow the Constitution because it's not our religion. He says, that's not the religion now. No, the religion is God. Well, who defines that God? It certainly isn't you. So here's Glenn Beck implying that I, Alex Jones, am calling for offensive violence when I'm calling for the opposite. And you know that, but his audience isn't some of the same people. A lot of it is. And so they believe now. He's slandering, defiling, defaming me to millions, tens of millions of people on stations I'm on. From Tennessee to Texas, from California to New York, they're hearing Alex Jones, man, he wants violence. He's Malcolm X. And, well, Glenn Beck says he's Martin Luther King. Actually, Malcolm X was not for offensive violence, and by the end of his life, he was no longer a racist and was no longer anti-white, and realized that whites weren't inherently evil. Nobody was inherently evil because of their race or their color, and that's why they killed him. So, again, it's another slander on Malcolm X, if you actually know what Malcolm X actually said. So let's go ahead now and go to Glenn Beck. We're going to skip this network break. This is so important. Here he is.
Whole thing is critical, and no one will tell that story. We must tell that story, and not for cover, not for anything else, but because it's right. You know, I've said, you've got to be that person when people are saying, come over here, come over here, come over here. That's going to happen soon. The government is going to say, come to us, even stronger than they are. The Alex Jones people are going to say, come to us, because we'll free you from that. And we have to be saying, don't do either. Don't. Stay with God.
Stay right here.
Stay with God. Stay peaceful. Stay kind. Help people. Be charitable. It's going to get ugly.
And by the way, that is a direct neurolinguistic. People kept asking me about this years ago, so I went and looked into it, read about it, studied it. He's like, don't be with Alex Jones, be with the government, be with God. And he pulls his hands into him. Be with God. Be with Glenn Beck. And then he goes on, there's like an hour of this, saying that the Constitution's not God, it's actually bad, pretty much. And you just got to submit Romans 13. And I guess just get hauled off to the FEMA camp. That doesn't exist, but they've publicly built. So this was this morning on the radio where it goes further. And again, the full tape is they want violence, and then that's the Alex Jones group. Yes, I want violence, just like I want to have nuclear war with Russia, which he's been pushing lately. You know, it's just getting so crazy, ladies and gentlemen, when you know what you're hearing is literally FBI scripting, and the guys' names on it are FBI assets. I mean, they have FBI assets writing articles saying I'm lying to people, Brandon Darby in Breitbart. I mean, that's how scared they are. Because you know what? If Harry Reid goes down for his Chinese dealings, and he should, a bunch of Republicans are too. Yeah, let's get rid of all these old blue bloods. Let's get rid of all of them with the corruption and try to create some fairness in this country. Because there's nothing going to be left if we don't. Now, let's go to the next clip. This is Glenn on his radio show this morning.
They think, oh, well, you know, this will start a revolution, and then we'll have a glorious revolution, and we'll get our country back.
How do you think that works out well? I don't get that.
No idea.
How do you think that works? Your
Egypt analogy as evidenced by their hashtag American Spring.
We've had the luxury of being one.
We've been putting out American Spring as because a lot of Republican groups have been doing that, but we're saying it's an idea. It's plant a garden, get involved, take over your city council politically, run for office, promote our ideas, expose the globalist. But see, comes up, I want a violent revolution, folks. He's now saying the violent group is the Alex Jones side. No, that's a bunch of government informants leading a lot of well-meaning hayseeds into a setup. And I've said that. Let's go back. See, that's why they hate me so much, folks, because I expose the entire paradigm. All the sides of it where you can decide. Let's go back to it.
Decent movement. We have been together and we have gathered together. And there have been those
pause again.
Who believe...
Hear the programming, we are together. We have gathered together. I was reading a Special Forces thing from Vietnam, Psych Warfare Manual. It was declassified. And it tells them how to say, you are with me. I am with you. We are. I mean, it's just he talks in that NPR voice. And did you know? I mean, literally talking and lecturing his audience. I'm just putting my cards on the table here. Let's go back to it.
Values and principles and God. And then there are those others that have wanted revolution.
Hey, pause. Yeah, values, principles, and God. We're standing up saying we're in a political revolution, and if they attack us, we'll defend ourselves for values, principles, and God. But see, those don't belong to you. They belong to him. He's Moses on the mountain. It comes out of him. You understand? Values, principles, God. You know, don't be aggressive, stand down. Get aggressive, say we're standing our ground, you're the devil. Let's go back to it.
Time. And... they've kind of come together, and they've been lumped together because everybody's been peaceful. Well, now push comes to shove, and you're going to start separating the good from the bad. You're going to have...
That's it, pause. you're going to have the government bomb another federal building with a daycare center. And it doesn't matter. We have the names of who did it. They'll just blame us. And then he'll say, see, I told you I'm not with them. His FBI handlers are telling him, you need to separate yourselves from these people because something's coming. And he's going to point his finger and say, I told you Alex Jones and his group was causing this. And MSNBC's already saying Alex Jones is going to cause bombings. And Media Matters, White House run, they're all saying with the same voice, Alex Jones is the bad man. And you see, when it all comes down, we all know who to blame, don't we? What's his name? ALEXJONES. What does it spell? Terrorist Texan. Man that wanted violence. You don't want to be with those that want violence, Alex Jones, that are offering you freedom. I'm not offering freedom. I'm saying stand up, get involved, do whatever you think. Let's just wake up. Let's get involved. Let's say no. We're close to winning. Support Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. No. I'm wanting violence revolution. And then the government, don't join them. Just stand down, which is joining them. Do nothing like you've always done. Any action, saying no to a free speech zone is terrorism. You go get in your free speech zone or we'll Tiananmen square your butt. And if anybody stands up when a tank's rolling over you, you're a terrorist. And Moses, with his Moses hair, why, he will order God to have the ground open up and swallow you up because, you know, everybody knows on Easter who goes and gives the big speeches at the Washington Monument. I mean, we all know, you know, the man of God who's got all the answers, and you go to him, and that's it. He sits on the throne, speaks ex cathedra. Now, let's go ahead and go back to it. Here it is.
The Martin Luther King and the Malcolm X movement. You're going to have both of them. And so you have to decide which one of those are you. Are you the Malcolm X and the Malcolm X side, or are you the Martin Luther King side?
I'm both.
I'm on the Martin Luther King side because that's the winning side. Malcolm X, just think about this. The people that you're dealing with, is there any doubt? I mean, I hate to be cryptic, but I'm not going to give these guys any more press. But the guys that are really behind a lot of this really bad stuff.
Alex Jones.
Stu, any doubt in your mind if there was a glorious revolution, they would set up some kangaroo court and they would try people like you and me and Pat and Jeffy, and we would be tried for being betraying the revolution?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a doubt that there'd be a trial.
Pause again. I've always called for due process. I've called for no violence against Obama. I've called for grand juries and juries and states and the Congress to impeach Obama. And now I want to kill Glenn Beck. I mean, that's what he's saying. We want to try him in a secret court and then off with their heads. While they set up the NDAA, Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, and say they're preparing to do that to the Tea Party, to the Liberty Movement, and we're like, we want to be peaceful, we want the government to stand down, do the right thing, but we got to get armed to protect ourselves. And then his response is, Stu, that's like a 5-year-old thing. Like, isn't it true that, you know, such and such is a bad person? Isn't it true that they would just try us without trials and set up a dictatorship? That's why I've been against a violent revolution, because it can turn into that. I mean, literally, to hear someone take everything I stand for and turn it on its head, and to know that he's got a whole group of people that watch our show and rip all our stories off and don't give us credit and do all that, but his people listen and like the show, that's why they send us stuff behind the scenes and apologize. And he'll run around trying to find out who that is. It's like half your people, dumbass. They listen to the show, and they don't like hearing your garbage. They know I'm good. They know I'm not against you. They know I care. They know I don't want a violent revolution. And they know you're a big, fat cult leader liar. Makes me really angry. This is the type of stuff being put out. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, these are people who are very dangerous. We've had run-ins with them before. They're very dangerous. And they're wildly entangled and involved in this. I don't think the Bundys know. I really don't. I don't think they have any clue of some of the people that are there. Most of the people that are there are good. I mean, we've talked to several of them on the phone.
All right, I don't want to hear any more. I know there's a bunch of other stuff. Is there more I should play? It's very hard listening to this. So again, if you just tuned in, he earlier says Alex Jones is this group. I'm just all those people. If some plant comes or some schizophrenic shows up and shoots somebody, that's going to happen in a volatile country melting down in a depression. There'll be real stuff that happens. Well, it's all been cast. Glenn Beck tried to stop it. Alex Jones caused it. Sorry, buddy. We've got all the clips where I've exposed everything. It's all on record. You're not going to frame me. Just like the Southern Poverty Law Center, within 2 hours of a drunk Marine Corps wash-up who had 2 pit bulls and his mother tried to kick him out, and he slapped her around, and the cops came and he shot 3 of them. And within 2 hours, Richard Poplawski, they had it on the news that he did it for me. Within 2 hours off his computer. Turned out he was a white supremacist calling for my death, stalking me online for 2 years, all over the websites and attacking me. And we found all of it, and it was admitted and they had to retract. Now, why within 2 hours of 3 cops getting shot in Pittsburgh would they be blaming Alex Jones? Why would they blame me for the Boston bombing? Why would they do all this? Because, folks, they know I've got their whole plan. I see them. I got the sunglasses on. Rowdy Piper's listening. Like, have you guys made a promo yet with Rowdy Piper when he's on the show? It's just at the end of it. We need a They Live promo. I mean, look, you can't stop the signal. It's already out. I've already said everything. I've already put out the scenarios. I win. So, do whatever you got to do. Play your hand. Because I'm not backing down. My ancestors didn't back down. I don't know how to back down. Quite frankly, I'm excited about all this. All right, I want to play this piece right now. It won't be all of it, but it counters Breitbart and the FBI informant Brandon Darby on record, this FBI written article, saying that Harry Reid's not involved in anything. The Chinese aren't involved. It's all a big lie. We made it all up. Here is Paul Watson's piece up on Infowars.com that debunks that.
The federal government is so desperate to hide Harry Reid's role in connection with a Chinese land grab linked to the Clive and Bundy standoff in Nevada that not only has the BLM deleted a key document from its website proving this connection, but they've also censored any trace or history of the document ever appearing on the internet in the first place. On Friday night, less than 24 hours before the standoff between Clive and Bundy supporters and the Bureau of Land Management, Infowars posted an article revealing Senator Harry Reid's link to the land grab, and it went on to become viral, attracting nearly 9,000 comments and being posted on the Drudge Report. The article revealed that one of the key reasons why the BLM wanted Clive and Bundy off the land and therefore began seizing his cattle was to clear it to make way for a solar energy project. As Reuters reported, Senator Harry Reid used his influence to push through a $5 billion deal for a Chinese energy company with close ties to the Communist Chinese government, represented by Harry Reid's son, Rory Reid, who oversaw the sale of 9,000 acres of public land, which was valued at up to $38.6 million, and then sold to this Chinese energy firm, ENN, for just $4.5 million. And Senator Reid also used his influence to help see Neil Kornza, a former Reid advisor and confidant who was named as BLM's director just last week. And of course, hours after this scandal emerged, the BLM did indeed back down, at least for now, in the standoff against Bundy supporters there in Nevada. But of course, Reid came back just yesterday to assert that the ranch standoff, the BLM's siege against Clive and Bundy, was, quote, not over. And it's definitely not over for Reid, because he plays that key integral role in selling off that land to this communist Chinese government-linked energy company. He's got a dog in the fight, and he's not backing down. So why is the BLM and the federal government so desperate to hide Harry Reid's role in this land grab against Clive and Bundy? Well, to illustrate how desperate the BLM is to hide this connection, not only did they delete the document from their website, but as storm clouds gathering documents, they even deleted the cached page on Google, which now returns this error. And to be clear, deleted pages are not automatically removed from Google's cache within a few days. The site's owner has to directly and deliberately contact Google and request that that cached page be removed. So not only has the BLM deleted the document from their website, they've ensured that nobody can go back to the Google cache and retrieve it via that method, despite the fact that it's already plastered across 1,000 different websites, at least the screenshot of the document, thanks to Infowars.
No, the full document is too. The full document's everywhere.
But the fact that they would directly request that Google even delete the cached version of this page just shows how panicked they are about people discovering it and people being able to verify that it is in fact true that they're kicking Bundy off the land, stealing his cattle to make way for a Chinese energy company linked to the communist government to build a solar energy project on that land. They don't want the American people to know about this because that would be a huge, monumental rallying point around the fact that the US government, the state of Nevada, Harry Reid, is siding with the communist Chinese in a land grab directed against the American people.
That's right. It's very emblematic.
And furthermore,
great job, Watson.
Not even
the full report is titled "Feds Desperate to Hide Harry Reid Connection to Bundy Land Grab." It's up on Infowars.com, and it shows all the maps, all the proof. All right, if you just joined us, I had to defend myself in the last hour because it's part of a larger frame-up by MSNBC, Media Matters, CNN, Nightline, Southern Poverty Law Center, to say that I'm calling for violence and that if there's terror attacks like Oklahoma City that we know is an inside job, it's my fault. And if they can do that to Alex Jones, they will demonize the entire real patriot liberty movement that is taking over the original Tea Party and that is taking over the Republican Party. We have a real shot here. So they want to say we're all racist, so minorities don't feel like they can be part of it. They want to say that we're terrorists, and they want to take the feds beating people up, pointing guns at folks, and creating free speech zones in southern Nevada and project that onto the people that showed up armed, project that onto them and claim they're terrorists that wanted to kill the feds. No, they exercised their Second Amendment as a check against the federal abuse where they said, we'll shoot you, basically, if you protest. We'll shoot you, we have video of this, if you come down by the property. This was North Korean style, Tiananmen Square style, classical authoritarianism. And it's got Harry Reid and the whole system scared. But you've got John Boehner and you've got the vice president as well coming out, Joe Biden, in a whole bunch of leaked recordings and meetings with their donors saying we're worried about the Tea Party. You have the Republican leadership giving more money, this has been in the news, in the last year to defeat real libertarian, constitutional, John Birch Society style, whatever you want to call them, informed Americans to beat them running in state and federal races and local races. You have a circling of the wagons by the Republican and Democratic parties to destroy a revolution, a peaceful restoration through the Republican Party to try to get some sanity in this country with the Fast and Furious and the Solyndra and the Benghazi and the open borders and the secret treaties. I mean, it's all happening. There's a race to the finish because the globalists are behind schedule and people are waking up. I called for people to not be violent. I called for calm at the Bundy situation. We had reporters there at the front of it. Obviously, there were some people there calling for violence. We were against them. And we have a clip from Monday of David Knight rebuking someone on air for that. Glenn Beck comes out and says the Alex Jones group wants violence. We can't be with them. Why would he join MSNBC and the rest of them? Because he's scared, folks. And he doesn't want to be blamed when they stage the next terror attack. And we have a clip of Glenn Beck on Fox News saying they're going to stage a new Oklahoma City and, quote, blame me. Because they got two Democratic Party memos talking about Glenn Beck and Alex Jones saying, boy, a new terror attack would sure be good to discredit these people. They didn't say we'll do it. They said it would sure help. And then Shapiro, advising Obama in the Financial Times of London, said we need a new Oklahoma City or 9/11 to get done politically what we want. I mean, they're very public about this. So The issue here is that you can see what would you do if you were the globalist with their socialist movement of domestication when the libertarian, constitutional, true conservative movement's exploding. As people wake up, you would stage events. And I get it, Beck. You don't want to be blamed. That we ought to find that clip. It's on YouTube. I know the guys have it. Rob Dew has it. It's Glenn Beck warns of false flag. And he said it on Fox clearer than anything. He said they're going to stage stuff and blame the Liberty Movement. Well, now he understands that that's probably going to happen. And so he's just saying, hey, the Tea Party's all bad. You know, basically, they're going to be behind the next thing. I don't care what you think. Out of fear. Okay, so this is going to happen. This was bound to happen. We need to be getting out there saying, A, we're not for offensive violence. B, we want to politically fix things. The sword is not as mighty as the pen. We are politically more and more winning. We need to all be very aggressive. But what's happening is a preemptive intimidation. If you get involved in the Tea Party, you're going to get blamed with a terror attack. No, if we don't grow the Liberty Movement now, they're going to stage the terror attack to blame us. And you see, I saw this, and then we're going to go to our guests for the rest of the hour. I saw this. I mean, I was watching this in 1995. I got on air in 95. I went down and got an access show because they were airing the Oklahoma City local news almost 2 nights later, almost in real time, every night on shows, showing the bombs being taken out, showing the witnesses that saw the FBI agents, the hotel receipts of the FBI agents the night before, seeing Jane Graham, who saw them planting the bombs, seeing the cops speak out and later killed, seeing General Parton show up and explain the explosives in the back of the building. I mean, I was like, oh, my gosh. And I'd read a lot of history, knew about false flags. They voted to disregard federal UN executive orders in 1995 in Oklahoma. They voted to just start basically doing what the Tea Party's doing today. And it had to be done, and the Deputy Attorney General, quote, ran the cover-up. That came out in Jesse Trinidad lawsuits in Salt Lake City. He was sent down to, quote, cover things up. And we've got his emails. He was even using emails in 95. You know, out to the FBI people, you need to, this is a, quote, D-Day level emergency. Get down there, clean this up. And we know what then happened. And I'm telling you, folks, they did that to blame us. And they'll do it again. These people are pathological in their criminality. I told you Fast and Furious was staged. CBS got the documents that said this will be used to restrict the Second Amendment. Of course it was. Benghazi was a false flag to give the weapons to al-Qaeda. Look at how they openly fund al-Qaeda now. Look at how all that's come out now. I want to caution the establishment. Don't stage the same old tricks you played 15, 20 years ago. It will not work now. We stopped your Syria takeover. We stopped your takeover to hand it over to al-Qaeda in Egypt. We are stopping you on every front. True patriots know your blueprint. We know your criminal operation. We're the people. We're the people. We're the cops on the ground because the cops won't do their job, so we're doing it. And we know your crimes. We know what you do. We know your signatures, and we're watching you. And when you stage stuff, we're there watching you. You're not going to get away with it this time. Now, the one man I wanted to get on is the editor of the New American magazine, newamerican.com or thenewamerican.com. That for 20 years that I've been reading them has been exposing the war on the West like no one else. War on the West, why more Bundy standoffs are coming, is his latest article. They documented, and we'll put it on screen, the executive order by Bill Clinton back in 1996. You can go to the William F. Jasper Presidential Library and read 12,986. Kentucky legislature looked at it and said it's a UN takeover of the country, of the land, because to get the buffer zone, you've got to then sign the land around it to them. They've shut down gold mines, ski resorts, you name it with this, so that the land that the Aspen Institute and the Nature Conservancy and Sierra Club owns, that all doubles or triples in price. Or if he shuts off coal in Utah, that doubles the Chinese coal. See, this is the scams he did, and William F. Jasper exposed William Jefferson Clinton. And it's got to be hundreds of articles. So he is the expert on this. And what this form of Agenda 21 is. He's been to the conferences, he's been to the UN meetings to understand what's happening and how real this is and why you see the Republicans coming out saying, Harry Reid's not involved, the Chinese aren't involved, there's no solar farm. Look, Alex is wrong, it's another part of the state. It's a carbon sink. If they're allowed to build that, they allotted the Bundy ranch. This is in the BLM documents as the set-aside. That's what they do. That's UN, UNESCO executive order that Bill Clinton signed us onto. I mean, I'm an expert in this, folks. This is what I do. I made a film about it in '97 based on Jasper's research, and I went and checked it at the library, at the UT library. I went to the national parks. They threatened to arrest me on video for asking about the sign politely. That's their attitude. That's how imperious they are. Now, I'm going to give you the floor, sir. I wanted to do that preface there. We're going to break in a few minutes, but break down just in a nutshell what we're facing and why you say we're going to see more of this Bundy situation. I know you live out in the West yourself. William F. Jasper.
Yes, I grew up here in the West, grew up in the Pacific Northwest. That's where I live now. Logging, ranching, farming, mining country. These are the natural resource industries that are the bedrock of every industrialized nation. You can't have what we have as a modern industrialized nation without those basic industries. You need energy. You need to be able to feed your people with farming and ranching. You need to be able to produce all of the things for building houses and construction and for all of the things that we use every day that we used to produce completely here in this country and which now have been offshored to other countries. But for the last several decades, there has been a war on the West, and as we have pointed out many times, the federal footprint in the 12 Western states is gigantic. From over a third to over two-thirds of the land of each of the 12 Western states is owned and or controlled. An even larger amount of it is controlled by the federal government. You don't have that in the Midwest and the Eastern states. That isn't the way that our founding fathers intended for this to be. But that's not good enough for the federal bureaucrats, the one-worlders, the globalists, and their environmental activist phony friends. They want to take even more. And every president, Republican and Democrat, for the last several administrations, has increased millions more acres for national parks, for endangered species, even private lands, taking more and more private lands, adding millions to the already unsustainable inventory. Every year, the General Accounting Office issues reports showing all of the delinquent maintenance records for the national parks, for the BLM lands, national forest lands. They have, as typical with every government operation, they are destroying the environment, destroying our energy independence.
Stay there. I want to tie it into the UN executive orders and more, and this is happening all over the planet. It's one reason so many immigrants are coming here. They're being driven off their land under UNESCO. We'll be right back with William F. Jasper, editor of the New American Magazine. I'm Alex Jones. During the break, I was thinking, man, Alex, I wish you didn't always get so frantic on air. Then I realized, it's a UN takeover by special interest, not even to help the environment, but to steal property. And it's criminal, and I'm informed, and the public isn't, and I'm sick of it. We have a map that stopped the ratification of Agenda 21 by Congress that Dr. Coleman put together, Kaufman, and we'll put that on screen. This, according to the UN maps, is what they would end up, if you're a TV viewer, end up having as core reserves, little to no human use, since about half the country. Yellow, highly regulated use, and then the green, well, you can have some use, less than 10% of the country. And this is what they do. This is how they act. William F. Jasper is our guest to discuss this. And, you know, the Republican leadership, William, won't ever touch this now because they're in on it. And, well, let's continue describing how it works, the names they use, the war on coal. Why do they want to shut down American resources?
Well, if America is strong and vibrant and prosperous, if we can produce here what we need, that makes us less susceptible to all of the schemes which they have cooked up for regulating every aspect of our lives. If we have our own energy here, if we have our own minerals and mines and things that we need to produce the all of the things we use, then we won't be dependent on China, on Mexico, on Brazil, etc. That militates completely against what the central planners have in store for us. They want the United States to be brought low so that the central planners, will be able to dole out and ration everything. And here in the western states, that's why they are particularly keen on locking everything up and running off the land the few remaining farmers, ranchers, producers, independent people that have property and can fend for themselves. We see, as I mentioned, the mining industry has been under attack, and this is a three-pronged attack. You have government, all these government agencies, the EPA, BLM, Forest Service, etc., Army Corps of Engineers. You have the big green environmental organizations, the Sierra Club, Audubon Environmental Defense Club, National Wildlife Federation, and then you have the big corporations and big foundations funding them. And so this is, Ron Arnold referred to this as the Iron Triangle. And, we have many documents from, for instance, conferences where counsel, attorneys, and leaders of the environmental groups laid out their strategy, particularly, for instance, as it relates to the Bundy situation today here. Go clear back to 1991. In March 7 through March 10 of 1991, at the University of Oregon in law school at Eugene, Oregon, the National Wildlife Federation held a 3-day conference. And one of the people who gave a major presentation there was a man by the name of Roy Elicker. And Roy Elicker came right out and said in his presentation, look, cattle ranching is a tough business. These guys out there who are cattle ranchers, if we saddle them with enough regulations and we keep changing things often enough, we can force them to go broke. And that's what they've been trying to do. They had That's
what Obama said about coal. He said, you can build a plant, we'll just raise the tax where you go broke.
And we have similar seminars and symposia where they laid out the same strategy for timber, logging,
and you've written articles exposing this truly criminal conspiracy where they say it openly. And look, beef's all-time high. Everyone I know is getting out of the cattle business, including my family, because you cannot make money. Mission complete.
Right. If you saddle them with enough regulations and litigation, and that was very clear. Roy Elicker in the National Wildlife Federation said, look, we'll tie them up in litigation. We'll drive them into bankruptcy. And that's what the plan has been. And in dealing with this current issue of the Bundy situation, I've referred a lot to the Wayne Hage case because we've covered that extensively over the last 3 decades. And it's really a model case both in exposing this strategy because it's now come out in court. Judge Jones came out.
Stay there. Tell us about that case and some of the others when we come back. I've seen cases where people own the land, but it's inside a national park or BLM, and they just block the roads. And I know you've covered those cases. I mean, this is piratical seizure. We're being conquered by the globalists. We'll be back with William F. Jasper. The globalists are creating a planetary system of crises to pose as the saviors and bring in total social engineering. William F. Jasper is our guest. I want to pick his brain about some of the political things happening with the Bundys, where he thinks Obama's going, how he sums up the mindset and belief system of the globalist. It's really a neo-feudalistic system of eugenics merged with transhumanism from my deep research. But it doesn't even take deep research. It's across the board, but I want to see if he's got a deeper view on that because he is a serious intellectual in the deeper research of these people and a trailblazer exposing things. I just want new listeners to know that. I'm going to go to him in just a moment to get into some of the other abuses of people as archetypal examples of what's going on in the West. because they just phrase this like, oh, this guy ought to pay grazing fees. The power to tax, the power to destroy. They can raise them to any point. It's like your property tax. Grazing fees, property taxes didn't exist before. But we're going to go back to him in a moment. I didn't plug anything last hour. That's because I get so impassioned. I even skip radio breaks. And then we've got to pay for those because I get so impassioned. It is essential to fund this operation. And we have the very best products on top of it. Things that I use, things that I've developed, things I believe in. The best books, the best videos, the best information, the best T-shirts to meet like-minded people and spread the message of liberty. Made in America, made-in-1776.com, Made in America apparel at InfowarsStore.com. George Washington belt buckles. All of it helps fund the operation. 1776 golf shirts. It's all there at InfowarsStore.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. I talked to Weldon in the back. We have enough of the Pro 1, Pro 2 as well. Systems that cut out the glyphosates, the fluoride, everything. It's the best gravity-fed filter out there. We already have the lowest price on these with the Traveler unit that's stainless steel. Normally, we have 10% off with promo code WATER. Right now, with promo code WATER, you get 25% off at checkout. And we've got a bunch of discounts, too, on the entire family of ProPure. And then they just corrected me. All the other stuff is promo code WATER to get 10% off. It's just period 25% off on the Pro 1. I said it was over Tuesday. It's now Wednesday. I'm extending it to Friday, and then it's gone because we have enough supply, maybe. In fact, it may be gone Thursday. But your purchase makes the broadcast possible. Plus, you need one of these systems. It hands down annihilates the other gravity-fed filters out there. We would carry them if they were anywhere as close. Because in free market, you want to carry the widest selection. But when something's so much better and the same price or less, I only sell that. And we also sell the Live Straw and some other systems, but they're in a different family of products. They just make it safe to drink. They don't cut everything out. This does. InfowarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. That's how we fund the reporters. It's how we fund it all. We're not state-run. We don't get money like NPR, MSNBC, or Media Matters from George Soros. We, with bailout money he got from the government, or Warren Buffett paying for media propaganda when he's the biggest recipient of the bailout. We get it through free market, free association. So InfowarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. You can also write to us at P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas 78760. And when you purchase the products, you get high-quality products, but it really is like a donation to liberty. Because we are listener-supported. And, if some folks don't like my style of being bombastic and angry, some people love it. I'm the most popular in all the metrics out there. Doesn't matter. Some folks don't like me. We got David Knight. We got Jakari Jackson. We got Leanne McAdoo. We got John Bound. We've got Darren McBreen. We've got Kurt Nimmo, Adon Salazar, Kit Daniels, and all the great editing people like Rob Jacobson and Anthony Gucciardi, and Mikhail Thalen, and the great crew in there running things. I mean, we're just here to fight for freedom, and we bring you these great guests. Okay, I'm going to give you the floor for about 5 minutes, sir, to get into some of the cases you were going to cover. I know those folks wrote a book. He died recently. The incredible harassment, the arrogance. When I went to multiple national parks, like the Grand Canyon in '97, I'm sure you've seen the film because you're sourced in it, America Destroyed by Design, they would literally run up when I'd say, hi, can I talk to the park ranger, your information person, about the UN sign and what that treaty means with the buffer zones? And they would come out and threaten to arrest me. I mean, it's like people show up with a sign, don't take Bundy land. Get back, I'm going to shoot you. Oh my gosh, free speech, I'm going to kill you. They've gotten a bunch of whacked out people to work for these folks. Break that down, William F. Jasper.
Well, Alex, it's very large. It's all over the country. I've focused on the West, but of course, that's where the federal footprint is the biggest by far. Where we have in my home state of Idaho over 50% of the land. In Nevada, it's around, I think, 69% up in, or 87% up in Alaska, 69%. So, but this is happening all across the country. Some of the earliest stories that we did on this, which demonstrate that this is has everyone targeted, dealt with cases such as O.C. Mills and his family down in Florida, Pensacola. This was almost, 25 years ago, close to 30 years ago. And the EPA came after him for cleaning up a piece of land that he bought that was covered with old cans and tires and wheels and junk. He cleared it off and put some fill dirt on it. They threw him in jail for almost 2 years, 21 months, sent him to prison for violating a wetland. And it turned out afterwards, and this is what's so important, because during the course of a trial, the victims, the people that are treated as criminals, are dragged through the mud. They are treated as eco-villains who have destroyed Mother Nature, etc. And if not for the beneficent impact of the EPA coming in to save them, they would be destroying the earth. He cleaned up an eyesore and an environmental disaster zone, made it into a nice piece of land. They threw him in prison for it. Afterwards, years afterwards, the jurors came forward and said, hey, the jury foreman intimidated us, lied to us. His son, he was an interested party in the case. His son worked for the Department of Environmental Resources, was involved in the case, and the jury foreman had poisoned the case against O.C. Mills and his family. And the judge had carried out misconduct in the case, and the EPA was later proven to be wrong. The ditch that he filled in wasn't a wetland. They later admitted that. So what happens is, though, years later, he's destroyed financially. Many times the victims are totally morally destroyed, and their reputation has been destroyed. And they've done the same thing to many others. One of the other cases we covered was William Ellen in the state of New York, upstate New York. He was hired to build a wetland by a wealthy developer. He went through he wanted to have a place for ducks and geese and waterfowl and whatnot. So he built I think a 200-acre little lake there. Had all the permits from the state, from the feds. After they got it going, the environmentalists decided they wanted to put the kibosh on that. They got the EPA to come after him. He was sent to jail for building a wetland.
Remember the grandfather in New York that killed the rat in the tomato patch with his granddaughter? He got arrested. The point is, with the green police, the mayor of San Francisco said the Audi commercial is really what we're going to do. We're going to start arresting you. A San Francisco firm made the ad. This is propaganda. Now, I had said it was propaganda a month before. He said in the news, no, we're going to come arrest you for your hot tub. We're going to arrest you for your wood-burning stove. People were laughing at me until he came out and said, no, this is pre-programming.
If you put a piece of paper in the aluminum-only recycling bin, if you put some green waste in another recycling bin, pretty soon, in these places, you're going to have 50 different recycling. But
GMOs, okay, everything's fine. So expanding on this, you were getting into another Western case. They want to throw everybody in prison. This is the new tyranny.
The big one, of course, because of the documentation and because of the really heroic effort that was put into it by the Hage family. Wayne Hage, rancher in Nevada, just up north of the Bundy family. They're friends of the Bundys. Had a large ranch, over 700,000 acres up there. Out in the arid west, you need large range land in order to run cattle. So he had his own fee simple land, and like many of these ranchers, then they have allotments. Many of these are actually deeded allotments. That is, they have purchased land, which is now called public land, or they have purchased the grazing rights on those lands, and these are actual property rights. And he was targeted by the National Park Service, by the U.S. Forest Service, and by the BLM. And what's so important here is that Wayne, who is a good friend of mine, and he married Helen Chenoweth, became Helen Chenoweth Hage, the congresswoman from Idaho, who was a stalwart champion for property rights and for all of the battles that we were fighting here in the West. They together took on the federal government, and over the course of many years fought a good fight in the courts, fought it in the public arena, and they kept their cool. And this is very important for the current case here. Wayne Hage had worked previously before going back into ranching. He had worked for the Forest Service, and he knew some of the people there in the Forest Service and how they would try to provoke property owners into taking a stand, which they could then use, bring criminal charges against them. And so he knew when they sent armed thugs to take his cattle that they were violating the law. He knew they were trying to provoke him, and many of his cowhands wanted to respond with...
And by the way, I'm going to let you finish, but that's exactly what Judge Napolitano said on Fox, is that the feds could only put a lien on the property that he owns outright and wait. They were not supposed to take his cattle, and what they did would have probably gotten an injunction on it.
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
What he did was, they came out there, they had all their guns out there. He went out there with a camera, started taking their pictures and saying, smile, guys, I'm recording all this, got it on camera, just like you do, like we do at these events. And this is important because they want to goad you into action, which they can then use to prosecute you, both in the courts and prosecute you in the court of public opinion.
But in fairness to the Bundys, they didn't have guns out, and then they would taser people with protest signs and beat them up, trying again to get people stirred up. But this time, they backed off when folks showed up the next time.
Yes, well, and here's the key thing. There were enough people, enough witnesses, and there were enough media, alternate media and the local media that showed up, television, radio, etc., that all of a sudden there were too many witnesses. They couldn't get away with this. So I believe they're backing off, but they're getting ready to come back again at the moment they choose, and not only against the Bundys. The Bundys are critical because, as we've said, he's the last man standing there. In Wayne Hage's case, the feds came in and actually rustled his cattle, took his cattle, but you know what? As his daughter, Ramona Hage Morrison, who is on the Nevada Agriculture Board and the Nevada Brand Commission, pointed out, look, even the feds cannot just take cattle, transport them to a cattle yard and sell them. By law, state law, all the cattle have to go through a brand inspection. Out on the range, you have different herds mixing, and we also have the problem of cattle rustlers. So
this is incredibly established law.
Right. So you have to go. And the feds have to abide by that law too. So they tried to find somebody who would sell them. None of the auction yards would sell them. They say, no, you don't have a bill of sale. You don't have a brand inspection. We aren't going to do it.
Well, that's what everybody's sick of. The feds don't follow any law. They're run by a bunch of NGOs and George Soros in their own documents saying we're taking over, we're going to bankrupt everybody. It's time they start getting prosecuted for a conspiracy.
Absolutely. So what they did, they sold his cattle illegally. It was a criminal act. If you or I or anyone else had done that, you'd go to prison for that. In the old days, you'd be hung for it. But the feds went ahead and violated the laws. They've done on so many of these other things here. And that's why Judge Jones's point, he's the senior judge for the federal court, District Court of Nevada, and his really blistering attack on the BLM, the Forest Service, National Park Service. He said it was a conspiracy. This was last year. He came out with his 100-page ruling. He said this was an ongoing multi-decade conspiracy against the Hages to deprive them of their property, to destroy...
See, I didn't even know that there was a ruling saying it's a conspiracy. But I mean, this is a conspiracy. Yeah.
Yes, and he used that term. He said this is a conspiracy.
It is. Stay there. We're going to come right back. TheNewAmerican.com. Incredible online magazine, but they also have the hard copy. You can buy them in bulk at cost, just like we sell Infowars magazine at cost to get it out to people. And back before the internet, folks, these were the magazines going around, and everything in them was true. In fact, they were always so conservative that they would, hold back. Is the only charge I have against them is that, they're very stickler about getting stuff just right, not going overboard. But when the globalists are going overboard on you, it sounds overboard to say everything they're doing because tyranny is overboard. And where there is a spirit of liberty, there's freedom. I mean, that's really elementary. He's going to be with us 15 minutes the next hour. I want to get into larger political issues with him, get his take at the 8 after about what makes the New World Order tick and how things are going for them. But finishing up in this short segment, William F. Jasper, if you just joined us, I'm your host, Alex Jones, here on this Wednesday Worldwide Edition. In this court ruling you were just reading from in Nevada about the same, BLM groups, the Judge Jones called it a criminal conspiracy. I didn't know that. Then what do we do when we're faced with corrupt, armed zealots? A lot of these BLM people and others are environmental cultists. They don't care about real environmental crises. They care about being anti-human. Just in Big Bend last year, I tried to talk to BLM people twice. They were so rude. I began seeking them out and talking to them, and they would bow up. And not just to me, but to others. I mean, I'm not saying they're all like this, but what's wrong with these people?
Well, we're going to see more and more of that because these agencies specifically recruit people like that. They want people who will be unthinking, Gestapo-type folks. And for all of you Forest Service BLM people who feel you don't fit that mold out there, and I know there are many. I know many of them myself. However, even those who are in the agencies will admit, I've known them all my lives. They'll say, yes, we have a lot of those types here in the agencies. And those are the ones that are increasingly being found throughout there. When you have a growing police state, you need people who are going to implement it. And people with conscience, people who really take the Constitution seriously are not going to fit in there. But what is so important is that Judge Jones, in the ruling I was talking about there, he said that the managers, the top people of the BLM, Forest Service, National Park Service, were engaged in fraud, in witness tampering, in a number of other things, mail fraud. These are all very serious, imprisonable offenses. And he went further and he said that he wanted these people removed from his jurisdiction. And he went further and said he wanted the Attorney General, the Justice Department, to initiate prosecution against them. Has the Justice Department, has Eric Holder initiated any kind of prosecution of these folks? No. Has Harry Reid called for any kind of prosecution of these folks? No. So it shows that when we have today the Bundys being framed as the criminals, and the way the major media is portraying it is that these Bundys are terrible scofflaws. They're welfare ranchers who refuse to pay their allotment fees, and that's the way the environmental lobby is playing, and that's the way Harry Reid is playing it, that those who came to support them are the scofflaws. Those that came to support them are a threat to American security. No, it is far worse when elected officials and appointed officials use the color of law and use the power of their office to...
yeah, it has a name. It's called tyranny. Stay there. Stay with us, folks. Third hour coming up. Infowars.com, TheNewAmerican.com. You're listening to this transmission. You are the resistance. This is a short 5-minute segment. One more segment after that with William F. Jasper. We're going to cover other political topics, get his take on what's happening in the Middle East, Ukraine, politically here domestically. But we have that clip I mentioned. Here's Obama candidate Obama saying, you can build a coal power plant, but we're going to set the price where it bankrupts you. You see, that's the power to tax is the power to destroy. That was Webster said that. What, Noah Webster? The point is that this is what they're doing, but then they exempt themselves, the George Soroses, the globalists, the General Electrics. They lobby for high taxes on you because they're exempt. McDonald's lobbies for Obamacare because they're exempt, and the local hamburger joint across the street isn't. I mean, don't you get it, folks? This is the ultimate form of discrimination. Here's Obama on the coal power plants.
So if somebody wants to build a coal power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted. That will also generate billions of dollars that we can invest in solar, wind,
sure, all your buddies,
biodiesel,
where you've got them taking over the Bundys.
Approaches. The only thing that I've said with respect to coal, I haven't been some coal.
We're going to go to our guest now. William F. Jasper, we got about 3 minutes left in this short segment. Finishing up with what's happening with the Bundys and where all this is going.
Well, as I said in my current article on the New American, that there's more on the way. Harry Reid made it very plain. He said this isn't over. They backed off. They're coming back. And not just against the Bundys, but against everybody else, not just in the West. That's where we're going to feel it the most, because that's where the federal footprint and the boot on the neck is already most magnified. But all across the country, President Obama made it very clear that he's going to use the EPA and other agencies to rule, to go around Congress if they won't comply with them. But here's the thing. Congress is already has given up on this. Congress created all of these agencies. Congress appropriates their funds for them. Congress is responsible for overseeing them. It is not. Where were all the congressmen while this was happening out at the Bundy Ranch? None of them came out there to interpose themselves as they're supposed to do. Governor Brian Sandoval did not. Sheriff Gillespie barely did, and then ineffectually he only did enough just to give himself political cover. The elected officials are supposed to be putting themselves between oppressive agencies, and Congress specifically should be abolishing these agencies or defunding them, and particularly holding them accountable here. But Congress is not going to do that if you and I and the rest of the American people do not demand it. But the final thing here is this is being portrayed in the major media as outlaw welfare ranchers taking advantage of the public trust, taking advantage of the public lands, and that the BLM is just doing its duty. And we have to show them that this isn't the case. And I think the Hage case and the judge's ruling there, and there are many other cases like that, where after the damage has already been done, after the people have already been sent to jail, after they've been bankrupted, after the TV cameras move on and the New York Times, the LA Times, and all the rest of them move on after they've already destroyed these people's reputations, then the truth comes out and we find out, oh, geez, these people really weren't doing what the media claimed they did. The victims, the property owners, were not the criminals here. It was the elected officials and appointed officials who were either committing crimes or were derelict in their duty in stopping those.
This is so important. I want to come back to this briefly because think about it. Congress acts like they don't know what's going on. They're the ones letting this happen along with the president because there's a lot of money out there. They all want to be kingpins. They want the people off of it. They can all get a little slice like Harry Reid. Coming to you from former Texas in FEMA Region 6. I'd like to get our state and country back. I am your host, Alex Jones. But this is a velvet tyranny, at least until now, to where unless you were being preyed on individually at the time, you didn't really notice it. William F. Jasper is our guest. He just brought up a federal judge's ruling from just last year in Nevada saying kick these BLM people out of the jurisdiction. They were involved, quote, in a conspiracy against ranchers. I didn't even know about that ruling. And I was just reading even the mainstream news articles about it, and you realize this is the same BLM. There's a reason they were able to run out 52 other families that were there since 1877. Because they put in regulations and harassment that are impossible to survive. And I think that's central. So I'm going to ask Kit Daniels to do a whole article pointing this out. But William F. Jasper, the editor of the New American Magazine, put a bookend on this, and I've got some other topics I want to cover with you. Well,
this is very important because we see it over and over and over again, and we're going to see it repeatedly, not just with the Bundys, but with others in similar cases. We saw it up here north of me, here in Idaho, with the Sackett family. They're demonized in the press as being environmental criminals, eco-villains. And over again, you have all of the various environmental groups that come out and endorse the federal hammer coming down on it. In fact, they say they're going to sue. That's what happened here in the Bundy case. The Center for Biological Diversity threatened to sue the BLM if they didn't really clamp down on the Bundys. And so that's part of this whole charade that goes on. They the BLM wants to say that, oh, well, we're just the good guys. We're being forced by a lawsuit to do this. And, of course, these environmental groups like the Center for Biological Diversity are being funded by the same people that are going to benefit from this. I think I'd like to end on something you mentioned earlier, and that is we have to be very careful because I believe there are provocations being planned. You recall in 1996, after the Oklahoma City bombing, Bill Clinton was on Air Force One with the press corps, and he said there that it was Oklahoma City that saved his presidency because after the 1994 elections, Congress had reacted against him just as the people had reacted against him and had elected a Republican Congress, including many conservatives, including my friend Helen Chenoweth Hage. And so he said, but the Oklahoma City bombing changed that. He said it created a whole mind change in the country as people began to reflect on this and decided to come together. Now, it wasn't an admission that he was involved in bringing about the Oklahoma City bombing, but we can go into that another time. My very lengthy investigation of the Oklahoma City bombing showed there is very much good evidence in that direction. Incident of this kind would certainly help, not us. It would help the Obama administration.
In fact, they're in deep trouble if they don't have that. In fact, I want to play this clip of Glenn Beck. This was 3 years ago, right as he left Fox, saying they're going to stage a terror attack and blame it on me. Now, he spent a whole hour on this, showing the quotes in their internal fundraising letters to billionaires and people, but they've also put it in a bunch of other publications. And so it's very thinly veiled that they're hoping for one of these bare minimum. And then now Glenn Beck is saying the Liberty Tea Party is basically going to do stuff. And he's so scared, I guess he's throwing in with them because he's putting out the talking point that's directly, I watch it, White House to Media Matters to MSNBC, everybody else. And they admit they have weekly meetings, and what you see in Media Matters, nobody reads them. They're not important, except for the fact that it is directly run by the former White House transition chief. So when they speak and say Alex Jones is going to cause violence, you know, and then have MSNBC say I caused the Boston bombing, sure, there's no proof. It's asinine, but it doesn't matter. It means that they're looking to frame us with me at the head of it. Let's go ahead and play this clip.
How can the left win the country? Watch.
Cabinets don't really sell things. The president himself has to reconnect with the people. Remember, President Clinton reconnected through Oklahoma, right? And the president right now seems removed. And it wasn't until that speech that he re-clicked with the American public. Obama needs a similar kind.
You think words will work for? Obama needs a similar kind of event. Oh, like Oklahoma City. I will be the guy who causes the next Oklahoma City. This is in a letter, an appeal to advertisers of Fox. Dear Fox advertisers, read this part of it. No one Left, right, center wants to see another Oklahoma City. The next assassin may succeed. If so, there will be blood on many hands. They are setting up another Oklahoma City. They are claiming that one is coming, and they've already marked the one who caused it. I will be the guy.
Let's stop him. What he didn't tell you is in most of those letters and threats, I'm listed as well, along with the rest of the liberal media. And when I say liberal media, we're Thomas Jefferson liberals, pro-gun, pro-constitution, pro-freedom. These people on the controlled right and left are the authoritarians. And I want you to have your comment on this, but the issue here is I'm not going to call Glenn Beck a Benedict Arnold. Okay, he does a lot of good work. I do not want to attack people that I'm seen as in competition with, because I'm in competition with tyranny to try to restore liberty. I really wake up in the middle of the night, as I know you do, William, for my kids. I know this is a hardcore tyranny that's coming in. It's not just some boss hog thing, or I wouldn't be fighting this hard. I wouldn't be risking my life if it wasn't so grave, as I know you wouldn't be. But to have Glenn get what's happening, and now he comes out and basically flips it and is almost like joining them, saying that, you know, there's a horrible Tea Party movement for violence. Alex Jones wants violence. He said this last night and this morning. We played the clip earlier. And that I'm a Malcolm X character. Extremely dangerous. What do you make of this, William F. Jasper?
Well, I think you're right. This is fear talking, probably. With Glenn, he is looking at the horizon and at things here, and he's hearing from other people. Gee, Glenn, looks like you could be blamed for this, and so rather than taking the principled course, he's trying to divert attention to others, trying to throw other people under the bus. I'm familiar with this for years with conservatives, pseudo-conservatives, neoconservatives, etc., attacking us because they think that will endear them to the liberal left media or somehow immunize them against attacks by the establishment. And of course it doesn't. It never does. They'll come after you later, or maybe even sooner. Many of the people who tried to throw us under the bus are dead and gone. They didn't survive. And so the only wise course is really the principled course. Stand for freedom. Try to do it as wisely as you can and as forthrightly and as courageously as you can. We have something to fight for. We're fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for the legacy, our heritage that we have received. We're fighting for our children and our grandchildren. We're fighting for this great country.
And we're fighting to not be conquered and run by really evil people. You know, I use the term
there's no place to run to anymore, folks. I keep running into people that say they're leaving the country and going somewhere else. Look, there's no other place to go to. It's time to stand here and fight.
William F. Jasper, editor of the New American Magazine, thenewamerican.com. Go there and get a subscription today to the hard copy and wake people up. But here's my question. I call myself a classical liberal or a constitutionalist. They've seized the term liberal. Do you agree with me that I mean, I would call what you guys do as classical liberal. I mean, you're promoting...
Well, absolutely. That's been our ongoing mantra for many years. The liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, right-left political spectrum is gamed. It really has very little significance. Occasionally, we fall into the trap of using that conservative. Yes, we're conservative in to the extent that we're trying to conserve all of those values and those liberties that we have. We are liberal, though, in the sense that the Founding Fathers were, in believing that people should have liberty, governments should be restricted, and that government should be restricted to protecting those.
When I put a bunch of hot sauce on my eggs, it's a liberal amount. I want lots of freedom, lots of property, lots of families, lots of religious freedom. But you don't tell me what to do. They call equality the government running my life. That's not equality.
Right. Well, what we have to do particularly, and here's where, you know, we keep referring to the federal government, the federal agency, et cetera. Well, federalism is a very important concept, a very important idea, a very important principle that Americans need to understand better if we're going to maintain our freedom. a central government, a national government of enumerated, delegated powers. Very limited number of powers specified in the Constitution. All of the other powers are reserved to the states and to the people.
And by the way, they think the public, I'm skipping this network break because it's so important and going to the bottom of the hour, so stations shouldn't cover this up. It's our network break. It's our break. I just want to point, I'm doing that out for listeners because this is so important. William F. Jasper, I hear them go, federalism says you do what the federal government says, when, as you just said, the federalism talks about how limited federal power is. Why even have states? If the federal government's God.
Those are enumerated powers. That means they're listed, they're numbered in the Constitution, and they're delegated. That means they are given to the federal government, those specific powers, by the states and the people. We are the principal, they are the agent. It only stays that way, however, if the principal keeps the agent under control. And so I get very upset with so-called conservatives who call for big government programs supposedly to implement conservative agendas. The federal government has to stay out of those areas. We can fight over certain issues at the state and local level as to whether the government should be involved in education, environment, or those things. But first of all, as a constitutionalist, we have, whenever anyone proposes a law, we look at it and say, okay, if you want a law there, take it up at your state and local level. There is no authority in the Constitution for the federal government, the national government, to get involved.
And herein lies the solution. If the governor had done his job, if the sheriff had done their job, and pointed out, hey, a federal judge said last year the BLM's involved in a conspiracy with environmental groups, we would have had the moral authority, they would have backed off and not almost had a civil war start. So I don't want a civil war. The globalists want to start a civil war. Glenn Beck knows that. And I agree. He said in the larger interview, I don't know if you heard it or just are so sophisticated you got it, he is afraid and says he's afraid. So, Glenn, the way to be safe is to come together and be honest that you're afraid they're going to stage something and blame us, or if people do kill each other, it's not our fault. But don't say, I'm to blame just because you are jealous and hate me. I mean, I am honored that Glenn Beck takes so much of our material and does stuff with it. That's great. I'm not mad about that. You don't have to project onto me and destroy me because, you know, you were a rock jock guy in the morning and picked up my, quote, shtick, as you thought it was, and have been successful. Good for you, Glenn. And again, I never talk about Glenn Beck or any other talk show host. I have to do this when he spent the last 3 shows literally, I played it in the first hour, folks, saying the violence group is the, quote, the Alex Jones group, and you don't want to be with them. And that is defamation on its face. I am not calling for violence, and everyone knows it. I'm trying to expose it, but I'm...
Well, that's why what Sheriff Mack is doing is so important. And I know you know him and interview him. I was one of the first ones to interview him back when he was a sheriff and was fighting the good fight. And it's very important here that, for instance, we talked about the Hage case. One of the reasons why the Hages were successful is that they had worked with and had educated Sheriff DeMaio of Nye County and informed him. He wasn't at first sure how to take on the federal government, the BLM, the Park Service, etc. But he got up to speed on this. And because of that, he told the feds, look, after they rustled the cattle and whatnot, he says, look, you're not going to come in and do that in my county. He didn't get up there and threaten them and beat his chest or anything. He's a very down-to-earth guy. He said, look, you have to obey the law like everybody else. I'm the sheriff here. If you have a court order, bring me the court order. And if you have a writ of execution, bring it to me. Me and my guys will take care of it. That's how it works. That's the law. You guys have to obey the law. We have to obey the law. And if Sheriff Gillespie had done this in Clark County, we wouldn't have had the near showdown that we did there. If he had stood up and done what he was supposed to do. And that's what Sheriff Mack is educating so many of these sheriffs around the country. It isn't as the left likes to portray it, as the establishment media tries to portray it, that these are a bunch of Yahoo sheriffs that are anxious to test their adrenaline, their testosterone against the federal agencies. No, they're just saying, look, we're for the rule of law. We are the law enforcement here in the county. When you come out here and operate in our our area. We don't want our citizens hurt. We don't want violence. We know how to handle it. And that's, of course, the way it worked in Waco. The sheriff there never had any problem with David Koresh and with those people. He went out there. He brought those people into town or into jail a few times. Never had any problems.
He openly said, hey, David jogs into town every day. They run an auto parts place. You just go put the handcuffs on him. I've done it before. But no, they wanted a big armed showdown.
That's what Americans need to realize, that the people that are really bringing on the violence are those who, for instance, the Center for Biological Diversity and the National Wildlife Federation, who are trying to egg on the BLM and whatnot. Come on, you guys, show us that you got some guts. Get out there and get these guys. Don't let these ranchers, these welfare ranchers, run roughshod over you. And so they're the ones that are urging the violence, that are urging the
no, they really are the bad guys. And I wanted to briefly talk about that. You've been to dozens of global UN meetings, and what they do this locally as well. They hire Agenda 21 people, AstroTurf. They have accredited NGOs that are funded by Soros Group, State Department, and others. They then go out and agitate and act like they're citizens. They'll fund a group to move into your town. They'll get federal grants. They'll have all the money, and they'll end up running for mayor and being your mayor. They'll end up taking over the water commission because they're seizing your infrastructure. Then 5 years later, they'll turn around and sell your water off for 1 cent on the dollar to some multinational and leave, and the mayor's gone. And then the mayor gets a $1 million contract with the energy company out of the Netherlands. I'm talking about a real case outside Austin. These are really just wicked corporations using government to set land and resources off use so they can come in a few years later and use it.
And they have their NGOs, their environmental NGOs. Every county, every state, usually they have something like Friends in them. Friends of the Wasatch, Friends of the Rio Grande, Friends of the Snake River, Friends of the Columbia, and they're all being funded by the big foundations and the big corporations to put a veneer of eco-friendly concern on an issue, when really it's all about control and taking away property rights. And if, as Madison, Jefferson, Washington, all of them said, if you don't have property rights, you don't have any other rights, because without your property, you can't do anything. You're beholden to government for everything.
That's right. In closing, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. In your gut, looking at what's happening in Ukraine, here's a headline: Edward Lucas, top historian. I hope I'm wrong, but historians may look back and say this was the start of World War III. That's the London Daily Mail. We've got all of this unfolding. You've got both sides manipulating. You've got all the things Obama's doing. What does your gut tell you about the future? And in essence, after you answer that, what makes the New World Order tick? Who are they? What is their mindset?
First of all, since you brought up Ukraine, I really, I could be wrong, but I really don't believe this is headed toward a military confrontation that would become World War III. I think that is what the globalists are trying to make us think, because they want us to jump behind this new Marshall Plan for the Ukraine. And I believe that Putin and company, the Kremlin, are working hand in glove with the IMF, the European Union, on this. Although they're proclaiming they don't want Ukraine to be in the European Union, actually, all the evidence that I've read shows that they do.
That's very sophisticated. I agree with you at certain levels, because then that gives them an excuse to grab part of Ukraine. And then
there are multiple gains on this. One, the International Monetary Fund is using this to justify all this doubling of all of its resources. If
it's got to stabilize Europe to stop World War III.
Right. They're going to use it to bail out all of the banks.
That's what Soros is saying.
Right, to bail out all the banks that have lent money to Ukraine and to all of these kleptocrats over there. What we are seeing in Ukraine, I mean, I feel very strongly for the Ukrainian people. We have written more stories at the New American about the Holodomor, the famine, and the cover-up of the famine, and the New York Times and all of their role in the State Department.
But you're giving the sophisticated chess-level events that are going on.
Right. So those... So I feel for the Ukrainian people. I do wish that they would have their own independence, but all of the polls show that the vast majority of Ukrainians do not want to go into either the Russian customs union or into the European.
And by Soros pressure, it forces some into the Russians, some into the EU, just like they partitioned Germany or partitioned Poland. Same global grand chessboard program. Who are the new?
And so it is a bit confusing. I have to agree. And I've gone through the backgrounds of almost all of the major.
William F. Jasper, see what you've done. You got to stay 5 more. Come back, finish up Ukraine, and then I want you to give us your take on what makes the New World Order tick at its core. What will it do if it wins? You've studied them like no one else I know out there. I want your take on that. I'm Alex Jones, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Infowars.com. We're going to open the phones up coming up. I'll give the number out. Stay with us. A strange game. The only way to win is not to play. William F. Jasper finishing up with the Ukraine situation. Obviously, the West, the globalists, put the Bolsheviks in. Well, that's all on record. And then the West made money with the Russians funding the northern Vietnamese during the Vietnam War. So there's always been different elements in the West that are working with the whole Soviet bloc. And now they're more of a nationalistic Russian system, but they've still kind of kept the old, communist bravado there. I mean, briefly, your take on Russia then and where you think this is going. I mean, certainly Georgia, they really tried to start a war with Russia to probe them to see what they would do on 888. Again, during the Olympics, they do that to embarrass Russia. Now you have them trying to destabilize Putin, but that actually props Putin up with this provocation by Soros overthrowing the government over there with real grievances. So it's a diverse situation. That lets Putin crack down. I mean, I think it's the same reason the globalist, the New World Order crowd created the communist, was so they could take our rights here in the name of countering that authoritarianism. I think it's just the political class wanting to create crises so they can profit off of controlling them.
Well, yes. I mean, some very good examples of that are, for instance, if you put in John Foster Dulles into the search engine, you go to the Wikipedia or any of the profiles on him, they'll refer to John Foster Dulles, former Secretary of State, as a rabid anti-communist Cold Warrior. He was really nothing of the kind. He was one of the founders of the Council on Foreign Relations, along with his brother Alan Dulles, back at the turn of the 20th century, 1910s. And he was one of those who helped formulate the policy of helping the communists come to power, not only in Russia, but in other parts of the world. However, later on, he said, and we've quoted him a number of times, he said when he wanted to push for the Marshall Plan, he said, look, the only way we're going to be able to sell this is by selling it as a containment of communism. He says we have to use anti-communism. Most Americans, virtually all of them, were anti-communist. Who wouldn't be? Who's for communism? But you can be manipulated by those who know your belief system. And so he said, okay, if we're going to sell this Marshall Plan for creating more socialism in Europe, if we want to get the American people behind transferring billions of their tax dollars to the socialist parties and regimes in Europe after World War II, we have to sell it in a package that they'll buy. I know we'll say it will stop the spread of communism.
And that all came out and has been declassified from Bilderberg Group meetings in 1954.
And so we have many other examples. Chip Bolin, State Department, many other top Council on Foreign Relations folks saying this over the years. Look, if we're going to sell this plan, whether it's fighting, expanding, starting another war here or there, we have to do it in the argot of fighting communism.
Let me raise this then. What do you make What do you make?
So what we see here is again a referral back to that. They're even talking about this aid to Ukraine as another Marshall Plan, and in order to have another Marshall Plan, well, you have to have another Soviet Empire, a Kremlin, to fight against. So does that mean that that Putin is really a nice guy? No, he and his Kremlin cronies are really still the same folks that supposedly collapsed back in 89, 90, 91. You have all the same guys and their progeny, KGB, NKVD, running all of the top government, top banking, top military, police powers, the schools and education there. So you have essentially the same system still in place. There is no genuine religious freedom or any of the other freedoms that we take for granted here today in Russia. Ukraine is marginally better. However, all of the same, when this Ukraine was one of the three, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia were what made up the Soviet Union. All of the other parts were subdivisions of those three main republics. After the so-called collapse, we had Leonid Kravchuk as president of the newly independent Ukraine. Kravchuk was a longtime top Kremlin apparatchik, top communist leader in the Soviet Union. He supposedly then was creating a new liberal republic in Ukraine. After him, Bill Clinton wanted to give billions of dollars in aid to the Ukraine, but we couldn't do that until we brought in Kravchuk, Viktor Kravchuk. And Kravchuk was also a top communist. He was head of their missile manufacturing.
And again, you're showing the deep state connections behind all this, and I'm going to let you go. I just wanted to expand to that. The drug war, ship the drugs in, and then fight the drugs you've shipped in and put the people that use them in prison to keep the price up and create a police state. Now they're branding that the new war domestically, the reason for the secret police and the end of freedom, is to protect everyone from the right-wing militias and gun owners and returning veterans. So I see them setting up a new war, and then, again, they will stage the attacks, they will provocateur them as a way to come after domestic groups. And that's why we've now come to the end of the road. We either defeat these people and call them out and expose their system, or they win. And they want to carry out, I believe, all the evidence is there, a Soviet-style reorganization at the end of which large portions of us will be in prison or dead, and we know that from the Weatherman tapes and others. And I just want folks to know, I'm not trying to scare you. You should be scared of not taking action against these people. William, who are they? What makes the New World Order tick at its core? And what do you think of the statement I just made?
Well, I believe you're accurate. People sense that we are losing our freedoms. They can see it happening around us. They can see the executive orders. They can see the all of the various assassination orders, the police state, increasingly the surveillance state, the warrantless searches. All of these things are clues, folks, that you're losing your freedoms. And freedom is a very fragile thing. Once government completely breaks loose of the controls that we have put upon them, it's very hard to get it back in its cage. And it's very hard to keep us out of a cage then. And so it is very clearly freedom is waning, government is increasing, and we have to roll it back, because you can look at any instance throughout history, and even in our own times. Once government gets completely empowered, freedom is gone. So when you get into all the particulars about it, would we end up in concentration camps? Would people be exterminated? That has always been the end result.
No, that's where it leads. Absolutely.
And so it is not extreme to suggest that if we lose our freedom, that's where we're headed. So we have to very assiduously, determinedly, courageously start fighting back, pushing back the government back into its proper role. We have to hold public officials accountable. We have to be on top of them. And once they're elected, that's just the
beginning. William, freedom isn't free, and we are in a death battle with tyranny. There's always bad people that want to dominate and control. And if you give them the field, they will win. They will dominate. Thank you so much for the time. I think this is our best interview ever in the last 18 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. William F. Jasper, thenewamerican.com. And that's why I get so impassioned, because I know this is real. And now it's very naked. I said we'd take some calls. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to get your take on tyranny. And is it as bad as we're saying in the Bundy situation? On those topics, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. This is so sophisticated that I have trouble grasping it all, and I'm a pretty smart guy. It's up to those of you that are intelligent, professional, to go research what we've claimed here and find out it's true. It's all hiding in plain view. And then I ask you, what are you going to do? I can't do everything. Just tracking enemy operations makes my head spin. Just dealing with it. But you notice what we say keeps coming true. We know what we're talking about. People say, well, why is it some 40-year-old Texan out there fighting it? Because I'm the guy that fought. I'm the guy that took it serious. They were trying to take ranchers' property and trying to ban our guns. I take this personal. And maybe that's weird. Maybe I should just turn them in and just let them do whatever they want. And no, we'll have a hellish world when we don't stand up against bad. It'll run rampant. And bad keeps masquerading as the good, but we in our guts can look at it and tell this is not good. Where we're going is bad. And let me tell you something. When America goes bad, it's going to go bad like no country ever went. You do not want these people to take over fully. And you notice all the crimes they've been caught committing. You notice all this. William F. Jasper agrees that all they've got is blowing stuff up and blaming it on us or releasing a bioweapon or something. I mean, and they're just horrible people in control who are so into manipulating people and so into deception instead of being into empowering people. I think it really comes down to goodwill. I mean, I just have a deep reservoir of goodwill. And I don't want to be on the sidelines while these people take over. God, I see what they do to kids in their care. I see what the system does when they get their clutches on troops, anything. It's just bad, man. Because they're a bunch of evil people are also bad managers once they're in control. It's like they can't do anything but grab everything, and then it all falls apart in their hands. And, I mean, we just can't turn the world over to these people. Briefly, this hour is brought to you by mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. Great storable food, great customer service. mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. They have a lot of other great survival products as well there. Storable seeds, you name it. mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. You're crazy if you don't get prepared in times like these. And speaking of getting prepared, we are still running the special, but only for a couple more days, then it will end. 25% off the Pro One systems. The Pro One Traveler, 25% off. 10% off all the others with promo code WATER. Just 25% off at checkout. No promo code needed. Infowarsstore.com on the Pro One Traveler. It's a nice, big stainless steel, gravity-fed filter that cuts out the glyphosates, the fluoride. It blows away the competition. It's the same price or less before the 25% discount, and your purchase makes the transmission possible. Infowarsstore.com, Infowarslife.com to find the supplements. Thank you all for your support. You're making this possible. It's why they want to make you poor so that you have no money to demonstrate, no money to vote with your dollars. They want you getting government-approved welfare, just like the Soviet Union, standing in line at approved stores. They are sickos that crave dominating you and running your life. They are the filth of earth. Heaven help us. Let's wake up and defeat these people. I mean, just look at them. Just look at the trash. Let's talk to Rick in Las Vegas. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, what I wanted to talk about is Glenn Beck. Personally, I think that he is a Trojan horse. He's just a shield trying to change the patriot movement, the narrative. And you know, I thought there for a minute that he was actually going to do something decent, but now I can see that that's exactly what he is. He's just a shield out there.
Well, we've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know if they've gotten to him, got something on him or whatever, but everybody accuses everybody of being a shill this, shill that. I try to take the high road and never infight. I'm not. He says I'm the leader of a violent movement that's going to destroy America and that I want to have him arrested and not given a trial. I mean, that's the full clip. I mean, it has reached cuckoo level, and the way he's dressing and looking, I mean, for people I know that know him, I mean, maybe he just has gone over the deep end. I don't know.
I think that's an honor. You know, I mean, that's what liberty and patriots do is defend this country. So,
well, sure, but I'm not calling for offensive anything, and I get called a wimp. I mean, it's ridiculous to claim I want some kind of violent revolution. The thing is, these dirtbag globalists are going to start a war with us because they can't beat us in an info war.
You're absolutely right. And I'm not calling for violence either. I just think that people should see Glenn Beck for what he is. And,
well, I got to say this. I mean, he does a lot of good work, but more and more I see stuff where he's just making stuff up across the board, and I don't know what they did. Thank you for the call, Rick. Ed in Florida. Enough about him. Ed in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead.
How you doing, Alex? I just really appreciate this last week's coverage on that Bundy ranch.
Yeah, did you hear me call for violence? Did you hear David Knight call for violence?
No, I didn't hear anyone call for violence. People call for freedom. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
so the
go ahead.
question I was going to ask, to get through to college kids, because I'm on a college campus down in Florida, and what's the best way to make this, like, you know, I guess appealing for them? Because all these kids are very apathetic to all this stuff.
Well, that's because they're in a trance. You need to just show energy, concern, explain to them that that most of their degrees aren't going to go anywhere, hand out flyers with some of the Money Magazine info or Gerald Celente info, explaining how it's all a fraud, and use that as a way to explain to them it's indentured servitude. Education's been set up to be a company store for sharecroppers where you can't ever get out of debt. Education could be a good thing, but it's been set up to be a fraud. That's a good place to start. Let them know how their ox is being gored to open up their mind to a wider world. Appreciate your call. Chris, Julio, Charlie, George, stay with us. We'll be back. I'm Alex Jones. Yeah, if you just joined us, Glenn Beck spent like the last 3-4 shows, in some cases by name, saying I'm the leader of a violent anti-American movement that wants to arrest him and put him in a FEMA camp. And he does it with an image of Texas behind him, talking about how he's a rancher and feels bad for Bundy. I mean, Glenn Beck is as big a rancher as Howdy Doody is. And then he's got this Texas thing behind him. He moved down to Dallas. He steals all my information, which is fine. And he just, I guess, wants me to disappear. Absolutely crazy. And then he shows tweets of people calling for violence and says, I'm behind it. I mean, just unprecedented BS. And I said I'd shut up about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I was even going to play myself clips and David Knight saying no violence, nobody should be for violence. I don't have to prove that. Everybody knows it. It's just really creepy that he's scared they're going to blow stuff up and blame it on him. So he's saying, no, it's Alex Jones. Just, well, that's a guy you don't want with you in a jam, I tell you. The rancher from Texas. Isn't he from Washington State or something? And nothing against Washington State. I mean, you know, I'm down here. Why, I'm Yosemite Sam. I'm a Texan. Can't trust that Alex. That Yankee. Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk to Chris in Michigan. You're on the air. Welcome.
Hello, Alex.
Hey, buddy.
Hi, good to talk to you again. Okay, so I have 2 one-word questions for you, or one-word answers for you. And
go ahead and ask them.
Do you believe that the CIA had anything to do with the killing of Malcolm X, or they knew about it and just didn't do anything?
Yes, probably FBI. But go ahead.
Second question, and then I can make my point real fast. I'm an artist, a musician, singer-songwriter. My name's CDVR with that, and kind of doing hip-hop, electronic music, and political-oriented, revolutionary lyrics, and I was just wondering, is it cool, legal to use sound bites from your show at all?
Yeah, people ask if they put a bumper sticker on their car. You don't have to ask my permission. You can use sound bites in your productions. It's fair use. I'm a public figure. Knock yourselves out. Want to make hate stuff, do it. Want to like me, do it. Just, it's absolutely, brother.
Okay, now I can make my point. But first, yeah, I wish I was doing graphic design for Infowars. Love you guys.
Do some stuff. Email it into us. We'll use it. Just show us what you got. Help us out.
And about the tyranny, I think it's messed up, this whole push against the Second Amendment. You know, the militias, they should be able to have jets. They should be able to have all that stuff because, you know what could happen? China, Russia, they could all just come in here, invade us, and the U.S. government's not going to be the ones to be able to
the domestic, I mean, they don't even trust our military to have guns on base. They don't trust the pilots to have guns. We should move towards arming the people. Switzerland, the locals have, like, armored caches that they control with rocket launchers in them, and they have the lowest crime rate in the world. Because bad guys are always going to be doing bad stuff. You give people responsibility, they won't. I appreciate your call, Chris. Julio, real quick from Illinois. Go ahead.
Just another example of the tyranny going on, Alex. Hope all is well. I went down to the state capital of Illinois for a job interview. I'm a broadcaster. I went down for an interview. So I'm taking the government-funded Amtrak train off of Union Station. And I was on your show in 2012 to talk about TSA agents at Union Station. I was hassled by Amtrak police.
They threatened you. They said they're going to arrest you. Yeah, I've seen the video.
Yeah, they told me they were going to arrest me. Well, last week I'm taking the train, and once again I see TSA agents trying to search people's bags, and they were trying to search my bags. They said for my safety they needed to search all my equipment. They were trying to check if I had explosive material. I said no. And then I filmed them. I didn't film my encounter, but I filmed them when I came back to Chicago, and again, randomly searching people's bags at Union Station, of course, for their safety.
Of course, the checkpoints. We're out of time. He called from 1530 WCKG in Chicago. I'm out of time. Sorry to everybody else. Tonight, 7 o'clock Central, Nightly News. Great job to the crew. Pray for peace in this country. Pray the Fed stop being aggressive and funding al-Qaeda and attacking Syria and overthrowing other countries.